Hello, everybody. I'm back to finish reading the book of Genesis. And I'm sorry if it seems like I'm trying to rush through like these stories. It's only because these are the same stories I think we've all heard like millions of times. Like even if like you didn't grow up in church, you've probably heard these stories like a million times because they're the most commonly ones told because to be honest, they're probably the most innocent out of all of them. And that's saying something because these are far from innocent. But don't worry, once we get through Genesis and Exodus and stuff, we start to get to stuff that the church and like they barely ever talk about because there's just really no way around how evil it gets. But with all that said, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Where we left off last time was when Jacob had wrestled God. That's what the Bible said. Or an angel, or whoever he wrestled. That's where we had left off. And, the angel or whoever it was just like, but your name will be Israel. Because Israel, we found out, literally means he struggles with God. Or struggles with God. That's like the literal definition of Israel. And this whole thing happens like while Jacob and his family are on his way back home. He's probably hoping Esau had calmed down by then. It'd been like many years later. So basically, once he gets close to home, he has an idea because like since he's accumulated like all this livestock and like sheep and all this other stuff, he decides to send like a whole bunch of like livestock and stuff like ahead of him. Because he's gonna like hopefully try to like give it to Esau to kind of like, ease the tension some, I'm sure. But he also kind of like a coward, like a total coward. He sends Leah and her kids in front of him and Rachel and her kids. So, like, listen, I'm here to tell you, I don't care what we've been taught growing up. I really don't. When you have groups of people like this, and they're clearly showing favoritism to certain people over others. Especially back then. Like, how could that not cause division back then? You know what I mean? It still causes division like today when people try to pull this dumb crap. And people still try to pull this dumb crap. I mean, not like literally this, like what Yahweh was doing. But you know what I mean? Like trying to like excuse, gaslight, like the way people talk about these stories, I don't know, it's just, I feel like we're at the point now where you just gotta be honest about these things. Like about what it says and what it doesn't say. But that's just my opinion. You'll see what I mean. We'll keep going. But to Jacob's surprise, Esau, like, isn't angry at all. Like, in fact, he's not only had moved on, but he had missed Jacob, his brother. He runs to him and embraces him and kisses him. He missed him. And that, that little part kind of gives me a little hope. It's like, despite, like, the division that was obviously trying to be planted between them, I don't know. I mean, I know that didn't help their descendants. But, like, I don't know, it just kind of gives me hope for humanity that despite the division that these two men all the way back thousands of years ago put aside their differences and, for family. I don't know. It's a nice touching moment, in my opinion. Like, one of the few. You better take it while you can get it, because they only get, like, darker from here. Alright, so we move on to chapter 34. And here, this is when, okay, so Jacob and Esau, they've done made up and everything. They're friends again. Everything's all good. So Esau goes back to his home in Seir, S-E-I-R. And Jacob, he goes to a place called Succoth. Or Shechem, I mean. Shechem. And then, he sets up his home there, basically. Close to his family and stuff. But, like, far enough away, I'm sure, to not cause too much problems. Now, the area, they were either Shechemites, Hivites, or maybe that's the same group of people. I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm not really sure. But anyways, So, I'm sorry, Jacob has a daughter named Dinah. I know they never like to talk about his daughters, but he did have a daughter. Her name was Dinah. And in this land, the ruler of the Hivites, kind of takes a liking to her. And unfortunately, he forces himself on her. And back then, according to the law of Moses, it was like, whether she was forced or not, like, she's, like, pretty much ruined after that. And it's like, she's either, like, gotta marry the guy who raped her, or she never marries again. Yeah, I know, it's so messed up. But that was, like, their rule back then. I don't know, don't shoot the messenger. So, Shechem rapes Dinah. Somehow or the other, while Jacob and his sons were out in the fields working, he hears about it. The sons hear about it, and they're all quite upset. Now, it's weird because it says, Jacob didn't leave the field or do anything about it. He wanted to finish working for the day. His sons, though, they went home, like, right away. They were pissed. This was their baby sister. And, while the brothers were home, it's unclear if Jacob would, well, I don't know, it says father and her brother, so I guess Jacob was there when Shechem came finally, showed his face after what he did to Dinah. And he tells him, he's like, I really like Dinah. It's like, oh my God, disgusting. Like, right after you got done raping her and taking her by force, then you ask. He tells them, I really like her, and, since I've already, tested her out or whatever, I'm going to buy her from you. Because this thing was quite common back then. And the brothers, they're pretty slick. I kind of like it. They were kind of deceitful, though. It was a little deceitful. Kind of wrong, but, I mean, they totally deserved it. Let's not pretend like they didn't. Okay, so what did they do? They told Shechem, they're like, well, hold up a minute. We have, like, a strict rule in our customs that the men among us, because Shechem also said, if you let us marry her, you can move about freely in our land and take whatever you want. He really had a thing for Dinah. And then, so her brothers were like, okay, we'll do this from one condition, man, because we have this custom. We don't live among males who are not circumcised. So as long as you and all your men get circumcised, then we'll make this happen. And then, Shechem was like, okay, well, I guess it's a fair enough deal. He must have really wanted to marry Dinah if he's willing at that age to do that. Anyways, so, they go and they get all their males circumcised. Well, Jacob and his sons were clever about it. They planned for this because they attacked them while all the men were recovering from the surgery. Attacked and killed them. But obviously, like Shechem kind of has to, like, sweeten the deal a little bit for his own men. Because he's the one who wants to marry Dinah, remember? Like, the other men at that point don't have any incentive to get themselves circumcised. So Shechem kind of sweetens the deal. When he goes back to them and everything, he says, but listen, when they come and live here, look at all the livestock they have. Because, Jacob had accumulated a lot of livestock at that point. He said, all that will be ours too. They're going to share all their stuff with ours and their daughters. So, it'll be good. It'll be worth it. Trust me. So, I mean, he must have had a lot of livestock because those men agreed. They ultimately agreed. The deal must have looked good enough to them to agree to that. Or I don't know, maybe they were forced to do it. Oh, Jesus. I would have, left before I did that. I'm not going to lie. It's like, surely there's other places on the earth at that point in time. I don't know. But anyways. Because they weren't marrying Dinah. It's like... oh my gosh. I mean, it's not really funny because they come in while these men are recovering from their penis surgeries. So, I mean, Jacob and his sons all come in and they kill them all. So I guess it's not funny. But I mean, come on, just let me have this one little bit of comic relief. We don't get it much in the Bible here, but okay. All right, let me move on from that. All right. Okay, So anyways, Yahweh appears to Jacob at some point after this and tells him to go back to Bethel. And I don't know if I said it before or not, but Bethel is the place where Yahweh first appeared to Jacob, like with the dream and the ladder descending from heaven, etc., etc. That's where Bethel is. And so Yahweh tells him to go and settle there. So he does. But Jacob does let them know before they go that if they have any like foreign idols among them, that they needed to get rid of them now. Because I'm sure once they got to Bethel, like he wouldn't have been able to protect them. I'm assuming that's what he's implying. I don't know. So they all get rid of it. And Rachel had like hidden one like earlier. And I think this is the point where he buries it there. Don't take my word for it because I don't see that actually. I don't know where I got that idea. Okay, forget what I just said because I don't see it. You know, it's interesting because the name Jacob, it doesn't mean anything positive. It's a Hebrew idiom for he deceives. And then his name was changed to he struggles with God. That's interesting. It's like both of his names had negative connotations with it. But anyways, this is the chapter 35. It kind of points out that the experiences Jacob had with Yahweh, they weren't just hallucinations. Like, they were actual physical experiences. And he reacted to, like, each of these locations as far. Like, he called them Bethel, which I guess Bethel means house of God. Interesting. But like he blessed like every place because it's literally saying that this is the place where God had talked to him, like physically spoke to him, physically, you know, all this stuff. I don't know if it's the same place where he wrestled with him or not. No, it's not, because then he calls that another thing. That's okay. The place where he had the vision of the ladder and the place where he wrestled, he gives them both sacred names and treats them sacredly. Okay, and unfortunately, after that they moved on from Bethel, after they built their altars and all that stuff, unfortunately, Rachel dies in childbirth. Rachel dies giving birth to Benjamin. And, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, so she dies giving birth to Benjamin. She had already had just one other son, which was Joseph. In this chapter, you know, explains whose son is who. Explains Leah's sons, Rachel's sons, and the two maidservant sons. Not that it really matters. Like I said, I don't really want to get hung up on bloodlines in these videos. That's not why I'm doing this. That is, you know, that's not why I'm doing it. There's plenty other videos who do go through, I'm sure, these bloodlines at great length. But that's not my thing. Okay. So we get to chapter 36. Chapter 36 also gives the genealogy of Esau, aka the Edomites. Now, they will kind of become important later, because there's all kinds of stuff that comes up, you know, between the Edomites and the Israelites. So, just remember, the descendants of Esau are the Edomites. Okay. So then we go to chapter 37. And then we start to talk about Joseph. That's Jacob's son via Rachel. Like Rachel's first son. Benjamin's older brother. Now, the family cycle of favoritism did not stop with Isaac or Abraham. It continued on to Jacob, because he showed a lot of favoritism to Joseph. I mean, Rachel was the woman he wanted to marry and have children with originally, before he had children with Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah. It was Rachel that he wanted. And I guess he couldn't separated, or maybe he was just so grieved about losing Rachel that Joseph and Benjamin were like his closest link to her. I don't know. I'm not trying to defend it, because it's still not right, like, to do that to any child, like, to make them feel like that they're not enough for something they can't even help. That's crazy. But anyways, I don't want to get off in the weeds here. And Jacob loved Joseph. He loved Joseph so much, and he even made him like his own like special like robe, which really pissed his 12, is it 12? No, or 10. Yeah, 10 older brothers off. It really pissed them off. Because, you know, it's 12 altogether, including him and Benjamin. But it really pissed his other brothers off. And not only that, if that weren't enough, Joseph is like the little dreamer. He's a little dreamer, and he has dreams that he doesn't have problems sharing with his brothers. Like, he has dreams that one day that they're all going to bow down to him and serve him, even though he's the youngest son. And this is like another pattern that keeps coming up. It's like what usually would go to the eldest goes to the youngest, it seems like, in these families, or at least the ones that Yahweh tampers with. And I'm not going to try to defend that the older gets it all either. I don't think it should have been that way either. Probably should have all just been equally split. But, you know, when you go the opposite of what the culture usually does, you know, it usually causes some tension. Causes tension. And now remember, because this is important, they're living in Canaan right now. And they had been for ever since Abraham at this point, living in Canaan. This is like the 4th generation from Abraham. I think Abraham's dead already. Yeah, I think he's been dead since. Yeah, oh, wait a minute. In the book of Jubilee. Wait a minute. Okay. Let me refer back to the book of Jubilee for a moment. Because according to the book of Jubilee, Abraham dies. But right before he dies, he gets to see Joseph's older brothers, Judah. Is it Simeon or Reuben? Crap, which brother was it? I think it was Reuben. I think he saw, or no, was it Simeon and Levi? Crap! Anyway, I can't bring it up if I can't remember. Never mind. But yeah, so like two of these boys get to see Abraham before he dies, is what I was trying to get out. But it doesn't really matter since I can't remember which sons it was. So, let's get back to the story at hand. Now, the Joseph's brothers are super, super jealous. They don't like him. And one day, Joseph goes out to find them. The older brothers are tending their sheep in the valley of Hebron, a popular area that keeps coming up over and over again, except this time they're not on the mountain of Hebron, they're down in the valley, and they're, herding their sheep and whatnot. So then Joseph, comes looking for them. They have moved on already, so he goes and finds them, but they see him coming from a distance. And like their hatred, is all, man, we really don't like this kid. Then they start to plot. They think about killing him. But out of all the brothers, it's Reuben who was like, no, man, this is our brother. We can't just kill him. But no, we're not going to kill him. We're not going to do that. Let's just put him here and there's a big well right here that he won't be able to climb out of. We'll throw him in there and leave him there. He won't be able to climb out, but we can't actually just kill him outright. And then they start arguing, and they're because I'm sure they're saying, well, he's just going to die there anyway, so why not just kill him now? So, they're all sitting there arguing, and then they see a bunch of Ishmaelites traveling. And then, it's like light bulb. They decide just instead of killing him or abandoning him, they sell him into slavery. Joseph. So then they take that little pretty robe that, Joseph's dad gave him after they have done sold him. They rip it up, put blood on it from a goat. Because back then they don't have forensics, keep in mind, back in this time. So Their dad would have no way of knowing if it was a goat's blood or Joseph's blood. He would have no way of knowing. And Jacob is absolutely distraught over his losing his baby boy. Refuses to be consoled by any of his kids because, this is his, favorite. And he's like, nope, I'm going to mourn till I'm with Joseph again. So, then we flash over to Joseph. What happens to him? The Ishmaelites, it says now the Midianites, which I think they're descendants of the Ishmaelites, they sell him to Egypt. Not to Pharaoh directly, but to one of Pharaoh's, top officials, Potiphar. So he ends up becoming basically a slave for Potiphar. And that's the end of chapter 37. And then we go back in 38. We flash back over to Joseph's brothers. And this must have been, right after they had sold Joseph. Judah decides to, leave his brothers. I don't know if it's out of guilt. It doesn't specify why he leaves his brothers, but he does. And he goes and he, where does he go? It doesn't say where he goes. Must still be in Canaan somewhere, because he marries a Canaanite woman named Shua. Now, before I continue with this side segment about Judah, let me start with a trigger warning. It's kind of disturbing. Not kind of. It really is disturbing. But it's still, for the rest of the stories in the Bible, it's still kind of, G-rated compared to the other stories. So, but I just still wanted to give a trigger warning. So, Judah marries a Canaanite woman named Shua. And then she gives birth to at least 3 sons. Yeah, 3 sons. Okay. She gives birth to 3 sons to Judah. Now, keep in mind, Joseph was in Egypt for a long time, so this all had time to take place for Judah, his other brother. This all had time to take place. So he has 3 sons, and they all get older, old enough to have a wife. So Judah goes off and finds a wife for his firstborn, His firstborn is And her name is Tamar. Now, I don't see specifically what family Tamar comes from, but it doesn't really matter. He finds a young girl named Tamar, for his firstborn son. Now, it says that, in verse 7, but Judah's firstborn, was wicked in Yahweh's sight. So, Yahweh puts him to death. Doesn't really say how or why, but it just says Yahweh kills him. Judah's firstborn son. Doesn't say why he's evil, but he's evil. And we just need to believe it. So, what happens then? Well, I guess according to their custom, he goes to the next son, Judah's secondborn son, whose name is Onan. And he's like, okay, you got to marry your brother's wife now. Knock her up. And then the babies you and her will have the name of your dead brother. Now, the second-born son, Onan, doesn't like this. He doesn't want to have kids that have his dead brother's name. But he still has the thing for Tamar. So he doesn't mind sleeping with Tamar, but he pulls out. It's kind of creepy, that Yahweh, how does Yahweh know he does this? It's kind of creepy. He must be, spying on him or something. Ugh, gross. So, Yahweh doesn't like it. So, unfortunately, Yahweh puts him to death as well. Now, Judah's third son, Shelah, was still just a kid. So, Judah tells his daughter-in-law, Tamar, he's like, okay, you're just going to have to live as a widow at your family's home until Shelah grows up. So, sorry. Well, Tamar is probably irked at this point. She's had to, sleep with both of his sons. And now, it doesn't give all the reasons. I'm just speculating here. That instead of, she's like, well, crap, by the time he grows up, What if I'm infertile by then? Because, their lifespans have already been cut short at this point. So Tamar has this idea. She puts like makeup on, I guess, and a covering for her face and disguises herself as a prostitute. Oh crap, okay, here. It does give a reason why she does this in verse 14. It's because at that point she did wait for Sheila, and he was grown up at that point. But Judah still didn't give her to him as a wife. And she couldn't marry anybody else at that point. Like, she was tied to them at this point. And and Judah just forgot about her. So that's why she does what she did. Okay, so she goes to the city gate, disguises herself as a prostitute, and she had a face covering, so Judah didn't recognize her. He just, saw that she looked like a prostitute. So he goes and approaches her and offers to pay her and sleep with her. And then she says, okay, yeah, on one condition though, Judah. But wait a minute. Judah, though, apparently can't afford Tamar. So he's like, oh, wait a minute, listen, I'm going to send you a goat. I promise. I'm going to send you a goat. Afterwards. And she's like, no, not good enough. This is what you got to do before I get my payment. You're going to have to give me that staff you're holding and your seal. Now, someone's seal is that's significant. Keep that in mind, because someone's seal is unique. It's unique to them. It's their specific seal. So Judah agrees, gives her his staff and his seal. Because I guess he decides, he just can't wait. He's like, okay, yeah, fine. You can hold these till I bring you your payment back. And they do the deed, and she leaves. So, when he goes back to find her, he does actually fulfill the promise and brings her a goat. But she's nowhere to be found. He looks for her. And he's like, I'm looking for a shrine prostitute. Because back then they had shrine prostitutes. The Bible doesn't really give a reason for this. But they did. They had shrine prostitutes. So, whatever. We'll elaborate on that another time. Because it comes up a lot of times. Well, Judah is a little embarrassed. He's got this goat for her. He can't find her. And she's got his staff and seal. He's like, well, shucks. I'm going to be a laughing stock. So, forget it. Let her just keep it. Because, crap, I didn't find her. Just let her keep it. Because I don't want to be a laughing stock. I'm sure he would have been. That was his seal. You couldn't keep it in your pants long enough to just go grab the goat first. Anyways, so a couple months go by and Tamar's pregnant. So she sends word to Judah to let him know that she's pregnant. And Judah's mad. He's like, well, wait a minute. What? You're pregnant? How'd you get pregnant? Well, Tamar's honest. Or they just know. I don't know. It was because someone tells Judah, dude, she prostituted herself. Yeah, and Judah is enraged. He's like, you better bring her to me, and she needs to pay for it. We're going to burn her to death. So, but Tamar was smart. So, as she was being brought out, be burnt to death. And keep in mind, Judah knows she's pregnant from this prostitution. That's how they all found out. He don't care. He still wants to burn her and those babies to death. So, clever little Tamar, she's like, well, you know what? Burn me if you want. But the man I got pregnant with owns these. And pulls out the seal. And uh-oh. Judah's like, oh, crap. And, oh my God, I can't imagine the look on Judah's face. Like, ooh, oh. I get it now. But he gives her credit. He's like, you're a lot more righteous than I am. And then he like basically apologizes for not keeping his promise and giving her his son Sheila, basically ruining her. But he's like, okay, we're cool. Are we cool? We're all good. We're good. You keep your honor. You technically didn't do anything wrong. You got pregnant with our family or whatever, even though her and him weren't married, but it was because of Judah. So, he's like, whatever, I forgive you. And then she gives birth to twins. So Tamar gives birth to twin boys, and they have a scarlet thread to put on the firstborn. And the first twin comes out. She's trying to get the thread on him, and apparently he, fights her, doesn't let her put the thread on him. So, out of spitefulness to a newborn baby, the nurse puts the thread on the second twin. It's kind of messed up, but anyway. So the twins were Perez and Zerah. Zerah was the second born, and he got, once again, the second born gets the benefits of the firstborn. Because we got to keep this division going, after all. So, yeah, Zerah gets the thread, the second born. And Perez doesn't get nothing. Okay. So now that all that side story with Judah and his family line is out of the way, we get to chapter 39. We're back to Joseph. Now, this story is very interesting. This is about Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Now, Joseph gets, in the good graces of Potiphar. Potiphar, gives him many promotions. All this stuff. And Potiphar's wife, according to the scripture, takes a liking to Joseph. And she keeps hitting on him. He says no. And then I guess, one day, she just can't stand it. She's got to have Joseph. And she, basically, fights him. And he runs out. And she's got some of his garment. And because she has a broken ego, she screams, rape. At least that's the story. Now, I want to stop for a minute, because that's the way we've always been told the story. That's the way the scripture says the story. And then, Potiphar puts Joseph in jail. But with the context of the time, does this story make sense to anybody? Truly, does it make sense to anybody? And keep this in mind. Okay, now, yeah, Joseph was in Egypt. And even though Egypt may have treated their royal women slightly better than compared to others, they were by no means equal to the men. I mean, that's just how it is in these places at this time, at least. And I don't know. Can you just see a woman who has so many rules to live by, who has no control over her life, over anything, unless she had some mental health issues or something? I don't see that happening. And she's a woman of nobility too. Remember that. You really think a woman was willing to risk being ruined forever, losing her royal status, all of this stuff that no other woman got but her, for essentially an affair with someone they considered less than them? I'm sorry. And I'm not saying that it makes much sense for the other either, for Joseph to risk what he had either. I'm not saying that makes any more sense. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this doesn't make sense. So I'm not trying to insinuate at all that it was Joseph who was doing this. I'm trying to kind of more or less insinuate that maybe this didn't happen at all. Because I don't know, either situation, neither situation makes any sense to me. Because Joseph and her kind of have this thing, this common ground. They both are only important because of Potiphar. Without him, they'd have absolutely nothing. They'd be slaves, more or less, and just treated badly. So I don't really understand. I think there's more to this story than we know. And like I said, I am not trying to imply Joseph did anything like that either. I'm not. I swear I'm not. Because that doesn't make sense either. I'm just saying like, as it's written, it doesn't make sense either. I don't know. Maybe there's just more to this story. That's all I'm saying. Maybe it didn't happen at all. Maybe Yahweh just convinced Potiphar to throw Joseph back in jail. I don't know. I don't know. But let's move on from that. Because we get to chapter 40. While Joseph's in jail, he meets the baker and the cupbearer, interprets their dreams. One of them's going to get killed. One of them's going to, live. And it's the cupbearer who is the one who gets the favor, and he does not get executed. And Joseph asked the cupbearer, because he knew he was going to get out, to remember him and to, speak on his behalf to Pharaoh. And the cupbearer was like, yeah, man, sure, no problem. But, essentially, the cupbearer forgets as soon as he gets out. Now, I'm trying to give the cupbearer a little slack. Maybe he didn't, necessarily forget. I mean, he just gets pardoned. It's not like he wants to, ask Pharaoh, oh, dude, there's another prisoner. Can you pardon him? So I can kind of understand why he didn't bring it up right away, I don't think he necessarily forgot. I just think he waited for a good opportunity to bring it up. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. But anyways, a couple years goes by. What does it say? 2 years goes by. Then Pharaoh starts having his own dream. He has his own dreams. And it's that creepy dream where it's there's 7 big fat cows on a beach. No, on the banks of the Nile. And then then 7 other cows come out of the water who are scraggly and skinny and famished looking, and they eat the big fat cows, but they themselves don't get fat. Then he has another dream where it's 7 heads of grain look healthy are devoured by 7, scraggly, dried up grain, and they don't get fuller. So, and Pharaoh's like, oh my God, what does it mean? It must mean something, because they're both so similar. So Pharaoh, it says in verse 8, Genesis 41, verse 8, in the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. So it's letting you know that, yeah, Egypt did indeed have magicians and wise people, priests, things like that. I know they like to say that magic was it was all mythology, but we have multiple sources verifying that. But anyways, that's when the cupbearer, in my opinion, sees the opportunity to help his friend out, the guy in jail still who helped him out. He's like, I think I know someone who could help you. And then, tells him about what happened in jail with Joseph, interpreting the dream, predicting his release. So then Pharaoh, is all excited, well, go get him. So then he asked Joseph, he's like, can you interpret this dream? Joseph's like, no, but my God will. What is your dream? So Pharaoh tells him the dream. And then Joseph was like, oh, yes. That's a simple dream. And he says, basically what's going to happen. You're going to have 7 years of bountiful harvest, followed by 7 years of famine. So what you need to do is you need to store up all this, what you get in the first 7 years, to help cover the famine years. Pharaoh likes it. He thinks it's a brilliant idea. So, he releases Joseph, employs him, and he ends up getting close to Joseph and promotes him. And then Joseph, heads up these construction projects to build all these granaries. I want to make a little note here. Now, if you look at the Egyptian version of events at this time, you find out that there's this group of people from Canaan who did, in fact, come to Egypt with innovations such as that, granaries. Because some of the oldest granaries in Egypt that they find today date from that time. From when these people were they called the Hyksos. They called them Hyksos. Now a lot of like archaeologists and scholars try to say, no, that these weren't the Israelites. These people were from Canaan. But didn't it just not say that they came from Canaan? And keep in mind that at this point, the Israelites were just basically a small family at this point from Canaan. I mean, and like plus the granaries and the innovations. Like, I don't know. There's just lots of corroboration about this. And because, like, Joseph does, like, work up his way high through the ranks in Egypt. So eventually Joseph had worked his way up so high in the ranks that only Pharaoh himself was above Joseph, okay? So, after the 7 years of the bountiful harvest and whatnot, then comes the inevitable 7 years of famine. And the famine hits everywhere. It doesn't just hit Egypt, it even hits Canaan, where his brothers are. And now since Joseph had made all these big giant granaries and stuff, the Jacob and his family, the brothers go to Egypt to get some grain because they're all starving. And Benjamin doesn't go with them, though, because, Jacob, understandably does not trust his other sons with his last son of Rachel. So, they go without Benjamin. Joseph recognizes them right away, although they don't recognize him. Which I thought was a little odd. I mean, maybe not too odd. I'm sure he had the whole attire, but I would have thought they would have at least been able to tell that he wasn't Egyptian. I don't know. Maybe not. So anyway, Joseph recognizes them right away, gives them grain, but he decides to test them. What he does is he puts something valuable in a sack, or gives them extra grain. I don't know. Does something to trick them, so that way he can send his servants after them and be like, I knew you guys were thieves and spies and all this, so I'm going to, keep all this grain, and you're not going to get any until you bring that one brother of yours that you were telling me about, so that way I know you're not spies. To prove that you're telling the truth, basically. So, and the brothers are like, oh, crap. So they go back home, they tell Jacob the news, and Jacob's like, no, I'm not sending Benjamin everywhere. But then the situation gets a little more desperate. They get hungrier and hungrier. And, Jacob finally relents, like, oh, okay. But, and like one of the brothers, I think it's like Reuben. Hold on, let me find out which brother. Reuben tells Jacob, he's like, listen, anything happens to Benjamin, you can put my 2 sons to death. I will keep him safe. So finally Jacob relents, lets him go. So, they bring Benjamin, and Jacob is moved and touched that they would, Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So they bring Benjamin. So then Joseph's not done with his tricks. His test. He wants to test them, make sure that they're, have learned their lesson, I guess. So then he sends them with a bunch of grain and then puts his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. So then the servants follow after them when they leave, and they find the silver cup in Benjamin's sack. So then the brothers see this, and they panic. They absolutely panic, because they know Benjamin's in trouble. So they plead, just like, okay, I'm going to keep him here with me. You all can go. I'm going to keep him. And they're like, no, please. They beg, and this time, it's Judah that speaks up, not Reuben. This time it's Judah. And he's like, look, this will kill our father. This will absolutely kill him. Let me stay here. I will be your slave. Just let him go. And, Joseph is touched that he's willing to, offer himself up, because Judah wasn't quick at all to defend him before. It was only Reuben back then. So, Joseph, goes and weeps, and they go and weep. Not weep, I'm sorry, they go to a room and eat. The Egyptians go in a separate room and eat because it's weird. They make a comment here that it's detestable for the Egyptians to eat with Hebrews. Weird. But anyways, even though he's equal to Pharaoh. So, that's what the scripture said. So, then Joseph makes himself known. And then, and he tells, but don't feel guilty because it was Yahweh that sent me here to make sure you'd have a way to survive. Now go tell my father and get all your, my dad and the wives and bring them all to Egypt. Take some carts to go get your wives and your children and my father. And so that's what they do. And they all come back. They all come back to Egypt with Jacob. And, Jacob gets to see Joseph again. And it's a big, happy reunion. And then they all, live in Egypt. Joseph has his own sons named Manasseh and Ephraim. They all live in Egypt. And he's, equal to Pharaoh. At least until he dies. At least until he dies. He dies. They kind of become strangers in the foreign land, like Yahweh says. They end up becoming slaves, yada, yada, yada. When Joseph dies, he makes them promise to take his bones out of there when they leave. And so, yeah. That's interesting, right? Because the very last verse of Genesis, listen to this. Genesis 50, verse 26. So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. I mean, we find out later that when they flee, they take him with them. But it's interesting, is it not? Is he one of the pharaohs that is missing? Because they keep saying he's equal to Pharaoh. Was he Pharaoh? I don't know. But, around that time, though, it's a little unclear who's who in the Egyptian timeline of events. And listen, I am speculating here. Please don't take my word for this. This is total speculation. But from what I know, it could be possible that Akhenaten is Joseph. Or maybe Joseph worked for Akhenaten. And maybe Moses is Tutmosis the Fourth. They call the usurper. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. Because obviously, the scripture here is not telling us the full story. Especially when you look at Egyptian history. Put them together. They're similar, but they're different. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm trying to put the pieces together. The only thing I've come up with so far is that Yahweh really doesn't like the Israelites. That's what I've gotten out of the book of Genesis. Of course, I know they just did become the Israelites. Right then, at the end of Genesis, they're technically just a small family, more or less. When we get to Exodus, it's several generations later, which is what I want to begin with next time I come on here. Several generations later with Moses, who's also pretty close to the Pharaoh. They're technically brother or adopted brothers at least, which is why many think that he could possibly be Tutmosis the Fourth, because he was a brother of the Pharaoh. I don't know. It's a little confusing. I'm not going to speculate too much. I'm really not. But stick to what we're doing this for. Anyway, I just thought it was a little interesting connection. But anyways, I will be back with Exodus. We'll start to get into hopefully lesser known stories after that, don't worry, we're getting there, guys. I know that these stories are kind of redundant at this point, but they're still important, though, especially with the new lens. And then it's very important, especially when we get to the books of Kings and Chronicles and whatnot, when we talk about David and stuff. There's a lot going on there that I don't think we're being told. But anyways, I'll be back.